Welcome to Downtime Podcast. This is the 40th episode, and this is a special episode. I currently don't have Jeremy with me again. He's on vacation. He's doing a lot of traveling for the first few months of 2018, but I have a special guest with me, a senior gameplay programmer for Double Fine Productions here in the Bay Area in San Francisco, and she's worked on Psychonauts, Brutal Legend, Costume Quest, Broken Age. I'm probably missing a lot.
There's a few in there in between.
But here we have Anna Kipnis on the podcast.
Hi, guys.
Let's start off with telling our listeners about your background, and you can just, as much as you want to talk about.
Sure.
Yeah.
So my background, I started working in games in November of 2002. And Double Fine has actually been the only full-time in the game industry job I had, although Double Fine is awesome in that they let you collaborate with indies and if you want to do your side project.
Yeah.
So I actually have worked with some other developers on games. So my background, I have a computer science degree and I studied at Rutgers College in New Brunswick. And let's see, I had a bunch of minors. My favorite one was cognitive science and philosophy. I really liked to, and also psychology. But I realized that all the coolest classes from psychology were in the cognitive science kind of department. Although psychology did have a really awesome AI class and some perception stuff. All of this is to say it really helped me out for my job because as a gameplay programmer, especially at Double Fine, where we had a lot of creative input in games, and I did a lot of AI work. It was just it introduced me to the field. People, this is how far AI has come. At the time, they were we will never figure out how to do handwriting or how to read handwriting. I mean, I guess it's still those CAPTCHA robots. I think it's still hard for them to really do it. But it's really come a long way. So it was really awesome, and they had a seminar class where all the best AI researchers would come in and give us talks. And
that's really cool.
Yeah, it was exciting. It was really interesting to just and they were so excited about their research material too. And so I was it was very cool. I also ended up taking a bunch of film classes, and that helped out as well because on Psychonauts, it was actually gameplay programmers who got to do at least the initial pass on all of the in-game cutscenes. So those are all the ones that are not pre-rendered.
Okay.
And unfortunately, you can kind of tell which ones they are because the pre-renders have not aged well they were, rendered in Maya at the time. And it's just, those are the ones that don't look amazing in HD. Yeah, but what would happen is we would do a first pass on all those cutscenes, and then an animator would go make sure that we didn't screw it up too much. But it was so cool because some of them did no problems, and they shipped exactly how I had set up all the shots and stuff. And that's really cool. That's one of the things about games is there's just so much work that you end up doing stuff that will just ship.
I was about to say you ended up becoming a bit of a jack of all trades, even though you're a developer, you're working on a lot of aspects of the production.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing about smaller companies is you get to do that actually. I encourage anybody who's interested in doing game development that smaller studios, you will get to. It's a lot of hard work, and you will have to learn a lot of skill sets besides the one you might have really specialized in.
Yeah.
But the upside is that you get to learn so much about how a game is put together. And so I actually, one of the first things I worked on in Double Fine was dialogue for characters. And that became kind of my specialization at Double Fine for some things, definitely AI and characters and dialogue and all the systems that you want to do there. But we would also have an internal game jam where every once in a while, for 2 weeks, we would work on just whatever idea that was pitched. And we would divide up the company, and so we would have teams that are really small, and we didn't always have an audio person. And so for one of these game jams, I actually did all the audio for the game. So you get to do these things that you just don't normally get to, that's not part of your day job. And as a result, what ends up happening is you have a lot more empathy for the people who do that kind of work, and it just gives you something else. You feel so much more creatively fulfilled, I feel like.
That's really cool.
All this stuff, yeah.
It kind of reflects your experiences in college, because since you minored in a lot of things too, it was never just about computer science. It was about a lot of things. So since you focus a lot on dialogue, I also think that's interesting. Does anything with your minors, so in cognitive science and psychology, help out when you're working on a game?
Definitely. So the other thing, I took a bunch of languages in college. So I'm a native Russian speaker, actually. So like I came to the United States when I was 10 or so. And so I actually took Russian in college, but the teacher caught on. There were like half of the class was all these Russian kids who like had never officially studied it, and half of them were Americans who were struggling with the language.
I get it. It affected the curve, didn't it?
Yeah, so she gave us more homework. She gave us the homework that she was supposed to give the whole class, plus she gave us extra because she knew we were cheating. And so I took Russian. I also took Japanese, which is it's like, you know, I was kind of trying to take languages that were, and also English for me was you know, I had only really spoken English by then. I was 17, so 7 years. So English was still a challenge for me. So it was like, you know, I was trying to study these 3 languages that were quite different from one another. And that plus cognitive science has linguistics is considered part of that. And so we did have linguists come and talk to us about some of the challenges with language and how do you study it, how do you parse it, and things like that. So I knew, for instance, that it was not going to be trivial to take, you know, to construct sentences on the fly. That would not translate well between all the languages. So like there's a couple of things that, you know, with Boyd, we knew that Psychonauts was going to be translated into what we call eFigs. So it's like these 4 other languages: French, Italian, German, and Spanish. Like E is the English eFigs, you know. So we had to translate it. We knew we were going to have to translate it to all languages. Well, Boyd was a character in Psychonauts who had Tim. The way Tim wrote him is he's a conspiracy theorist, and so he was going to be like, you know, kind of conjuring these theories up procedurally. So we knew that it was going to have to be translated, and so we had to approach it from a certain light, so that, like, you know, when things got put together, it still worked.
It made sense.
In all these different languages. And of course, we gave the localizers, the people who translated it, a lot of latitude to say, like, okay, we know some of these are not going to work. Just make it work however it doesn't sound awkward in the language.
I just realized that's a really lengthy task because when you're creating a game you're also thinking of when people from other countries play.
Exactly. And so the grammatical structures of Russian versus Japanese versus English, I mean, they're very different languages. And it's just knowing, being aware of like how different the language structure can be in all of these tongues. That can really help you out if you're doing dialogue for characters and you know that your game is going to get translated. This kept coming up in Costume Quest. You could choose to play Ren, who's the girl, or her brother. In fact, you know what's funny is like people think like, oh, it's so nice of them to have a girl character as well. Like when we actually only wanted Ren. We added the boy. But yeah, so you could pick. You could pick to play as either the brother or the sister, and then the other gets kidnapped, right?
Yes.
Well, so like all of those cutscenes had to be adjusted so that, like, you know, if you chose to play as the boy versus as the girl,
I see.
And you know, languages like Italian and Spanish and French,
they have masculine and feminine.
Exactly. Yes. So you had to watch out for that, and so we actually ended up writing 2 versions. We tried to avoid using pronouns or anything like that, like when speaking about them, or should just try to avoid speaking about them as much as possible in the dialogue. And then for places where we absolutely needed it, we had a duplicate line where the translators would know that, okay, this was for the boy version, this is for the girl version. What else? Like, you know, and whenever you have any kind of procedural dialogue, this comes up a lot.
Did working on dialogue just kind of fall into your lap, or when you were dividing tasks for the first time, you wanted to work on that? That kind of like, so the Boyd dialogue thing just kind of fell into my lap because I was assigned to work on Boyd, and there was nothing, you know, in my background that would have
like flagged me. I was like, oh yeah, she's totally the dialogue person. But like, I mean, I think that I really loved that experience. And then Eric Wolpa, who was another writer actually on Psychonauts, as well as a programmer. He had a lot of work. But he and we kind of wrote some of the dialogue systems involved with all of the characters in the game. And then after Eric left, I was kind of the steward of that system because I knew how to work the best. When we worked on Brutal Legend, which ended up, so we wrote that engine from scratch, and that ended up being the engine that we used for all of our games that shipped after that, all of our 3D games. So the system that I wrote for Brutal Legend is the one that all of these other games have. Yeah. So that was just like, okay, Anna knows about, like, we don't have very much time. We are so, like, you know, we have to ship this like yesterday, so like let's just have her work on it because it'd just be the fastest, most efficient way.
I think that's really cool, creating some sort of architecture that ends up being used like for almost all the games.
Yeah, it's cool. It's really cool. Like you feel like even if you're not working on something, you're still contributing a little bit. Yeah.
How big is Double Fine?
That's an interesting question. So when I started, I think it was about 25 people. On Psychonauts, I think it grew to something like 42. I'm giving exact numbers, but they are really approximate. I think the biggest we ever were during Brutal Legend, which was like something like 70.
Okay.
And we've always had, like, you know, contractors. Sometimes we would outsource things like to companies we really trusted. But right now, I think we're at 50 something, like mid to low 50s.
Working on the next Psychonauts.
Some other things that we haven't announced, like smaller things.
Got it. Speaking of the second Psychonauts that's coming out, so the first Psychonauts I believe came out in 2005, and the next one is probably going to come out in 2019, I believe. But or what made you all decide? We're just going to bring this back and create a new storyline.
Yeah, so, I mean, so throw your mind back to 2005. There was no digital distribution platform. Steam had not yet come out.
Yes.
This is one of these things where we worked so hard on Psychonauts. And then for whatever reason, it wasn't available in all the stores we were hoping it would be available. And then the thing about games is they're like milk. They're on the shelf for like 2 weeks. And then they're gone. Yeah. And that's it. You only ever see them in used bins. And this is like, in 2005, this was the state of affairs. It meant that games would just like, 2 weeks, like, I'm over it, like, next game. You know what I mean? Like, it was just such a difficult market.
I think, especially if you were an indie developer and you were AAA.
Yeah. That's the thing I feel like maybe is not as well remembered now, because, you know, Double Fine is like kind of a mid-sized company, especially with these tiny indie developers that are around now. But back then we were like the indie.
That's true.
It's crazy. Like we were, you know, quote unquote competing against teams with like hundreds of people, if not thousands, and we were like 42 or, you know, up to like fewer than 50 people, right?
Sometimes there's some indie developers now it's just like a one-man team.
I know, yeah, and it's just like, yeah, it's, you know, things have changed, technology has changed, and also with the PC distribution platform, that gave those indies an opportunity to actually, you know, earn something, because previously you had to have a publisher to be on. In fact, you know what's funny is that some of our own games were taken off. I'm not going to mention the console's name, but we were taken off the console because we weren't the publisher, and so our games weren't allowed to be there. And so when the rights reverted to us, they had to take the game off because they had very strict rules about. Wow. Yeah, it's kind of crazy. I mean, this is something that maybe the wider audience is not aware of, but like it can be really tough to be an independent developer, and it was tough back then. So our game came out, and 2 weeks later it was all like gone, like we couldn't get it anymore. But there were like these, you know, there were some fans of the game, so it just kind of spread through word of mouth, and eventually like it just never completely died in popularity, and so eventually
a lot of people consider it a cult classic.
Yeah, but we didn't know it was gonna be that. Like we worked our asses off, and then it was like, okay, yeah, it's out, I could go to store. I remember I was such a dork. I went to a store and like it's like, oh, do you have Psychonauts?
Oh.
And they're like, and the guy just, whoever it was, I remember Psycho Mouse. And I'm like, no, it's Psycho. Anyway, like if people didn't really care that much, but it was like so special to actually hold it in your hand. It's like, oh my God, this is the thing that we were making for the last like I worked on Psychonauts for about 2.5 years. Somehow, by some miracle, thanks to Steam, thanks to like digital distribution and PC gaming becoming like supportive of indies. It's hard for me to talk about the fandom of this game. I like appreciate it so much, but I don't really know how it happened. It was like it kind of blindsided me one of these days. I was just like, oh my God, Psychonauts is still selling. It's still popular.
It was featured on the front page too this past weekend, I think.
Yeah, it's just crazy. Yeah, I mean it's insane. But anyway, so what had happened was like it built up, and I think around when we launched the Kickstarter. In 2012. Okay, so here's the thing about the Kickstarter is we were approached by 2-Player Productions, which was a documentary company, and they were like, hey, we would love to do a story about making games with you. And we were like, oh yeah, we would love that. We'd love opening things up for the public to witness like what development is actually like without, making it this PR stunt and like you guys are perfect because you're a third party and all this stuff. But we're like, but we don't have any games that you could film. And that's why we put up the Kickstarters, because we, the model then was just publishers. Like you had to get a publisher. I mean, it still is like that to some degree, but there are other options now. In any case, like that is what happened. And I think there was some confusion where people thought that we were actually kickstarting Psychonauts.
Oh,
like I kind of wonder like how much it was this weird thing like, oh man, all this time we love Psychonauts so much and we had no way of directly giving you money, so here's money. Like it was kind of so we were like, you guys want Psychonauts, interestingly. And so we were like, hey, like I guess there's people really want a sequel to this game. Yeah. And there's Tim had many ideas for it that just got shelved for one reason or another, and then it just kept being on our radar since then. And so we were like, okay, why don't we just do it? Like it would be fun to work on it again.
That's really cool. So to go off of the digital distribution and Steam especially, there's a lot of game because so growing up I only had a PlayStation and it was during the times where your parents, they were only going to buy you one thing.
Yeah, exactly.
So I was only a PlayStation person, but I did play Psychonauts though.
Oh, you did? Okay.
I played Psychonauts on PlayStation, and then, but there's certain things, like for example, that came out on Microsoft, Xbox, or Nintendo, or that I could never play.
Exactly, yeah.
And so it makes sense that, especially with this, that now the game's accessible to everyone.
Exactly.
And not to mention affordable too.
Yeah, exactly. It's like sometimes it costs like $1 or something like that. Yeah, it's and the other thing is it was updated like it actually holds up pretty well for a game made that long ago with some of the textures were up-res and things like that.
I'm really excited for Psychonauts too.
Oh, cool! I hope it doesn't disappoint.
No. Well, I've been a huge fan of Double Fine for like a long time, so I've like played pretty much almost everything. Yeah, and actually Jeremy too, who's not on this podcast.
Hi, Jeremy.
Yes. By the way, he has a few questions for you.
Okay.
One of them is, are there any plans for a Costume Quest 3 in the future? And why is the answer yes?
I have not heard of any such plans, but I could be just out of touch with, the things that are actually happening. And no, I mean, I don't know that, yes, Jeremy. I mean, I don't quite know. I don't know what's going on. Right now, I think we're pretty busy on the things that are going on, yeah. We have some really cool stuff that we haven't announced.
Awesome. Is there anything you can tell us about Psychonauts too?
They haven't yet. Well, okay, so here's a couple of things. So there has actually been a sequel to Psychonauts already.
It's VR. The VR one. Yes, I know that.
And that takes place immediately after the events of the first game, right? And then the sequel takes place immediately after the VR experience.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's actually a sequel there's already a prequel to the game.
Oh shoot!
Yeah. So basically, it's only been a few days since.
Really, it's only been a few days after.
Yes. So Raz is only about 4 days older than last you saw him.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So a lot has happened, but
in 4 days.
Yes. And I don't know how much I want to spoil for you, but essentially, there is. Raz moves. There's upward mobility for Raz in the Psychonauts world.
Got it.
However, there are challenges as well. There's something like, a TV episode preview.
Like a trailer.
Summary. I really don't want to spoil it. It's super interesting. There's a lot, you learn a lot more about the history of Psychonauts. And, and some characters you might know already.
Awesome.
As well. Yeah. There's some romantic entanglements revealed.
All right.
Yeah. And this, what's funny is there was such a long wait from the last game.
It's like, 2018, 13 years.
Yeah. I mean, that is a long time. And it's hard to not fail all of our fans. I mean, I hope we don't, but there's, it's a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think the game is looking pretty awesome, but I'll let everyone judge.
Yeah. So he really likes Funhouse, and he really likes James Woollum as a voice actor. And when he found out that James Woollum was going to be unnamed character on Psychonauts 2, he got really excited. And did you work with him directly?
I did not. No,
okay.
no. I mean, we, there was it's one of these things where I knew of all the antics, and it was I think we had him on a call once with kind of the whole company, so we said something. Yeah. There's definitely communication there, but it was, I have not worked with him directly.
Okay.
So far.
Got it.
Yeah. So the way, just to apprise you kind of how the dialogue recording stuff. So there's Tim who writes, whoever is, maybe there's another writer, but right now Tim who writes all the dialogue. Then the team kind of makes sure that, it all kind of fits with what we've been developing so far. And then it gets scratch recorded because we want to have it in the game as soon as possible. And scratch recording means just people in the team pick a character they want to act as, and our sound department records. Yeah, and we just and using our systems, we get it into the game, and then we make sure that it works. Right, so you don't want to talented actors are expensive. Actors it's expensive to actually record somebody, and you have to book a studio. You have to make sure that the actor is properly compensated, and you don't want to waste anyone's time. So we only want to record with final professional actors.
Yeah.
Like Mr. Willem, once we know for sure that all the lines are exactly how we want them. So initially, we actually get things into the game and iterate on them. Sometimes we have to cut things down. Sometimes we have to add things. Sometimes we have to change the story. Sometimes a puzzle just doesn't work and you have to put hints in there or whatever it is. Localization producer who kind of handles all of this. She prints out all the scripts. And then, so that's Melina Annabelle who does all of this stuff. And then we have Chris Brown, who Tim has been working with for a very long time. She does the recording, and usually Tim is there. And if maybe there's another writer, if Eric were to, Eric would probably be there if he also wrote to direct and to answer any questions the actors might have. And then the dialogue comes back, our audio department edits all of it, and it gets replaced. The scratch dialogue is replaced.
In the game.
Yeah, directly in the game. And one interesting thing is we don't, so let's say there's a cutscene you have to animate.
Yeah.
Our animators don't finish animate. We have a layout stage where characters will move kind of like this. They just slide on the ground. And I just did a sliding on the table motion with my fingers for those who can't see. They just, there's no, it's very, very rough. It just has the correct cuts and positioning of the characters.
It's just staging.
It's just staging, exactly. because you cannot, like, we're one of those studios that kind of like, you know, with Disney Animation and Pixar, you animate to the performance.
Yeah, to the actual voice.
Yeah, exactly. Because like an actor can often bring a lot to the performance and things like that. So for any gameplay stuff, sometimes the timing might have to change or something like that. Sometimes, you know, what often happens is that you're in the recording studio and the actor does like a really cool take. And you're like, oh man, they said that they improvised on this and this is not the line that's in there, but we're going to add it. We really love it.
Oh, okay.
Something like that,
yeah.
And then you have to actually implement that in the game. So, yeah, it's an interesting process. It's really cool though, because like it feels like someone makes a little contribution to that world every step of the way. I mean, This is how I feel playing the original Psychonauts. Is like I can actually feel like the people I worked with like come into the room and just sit next to me for a little bit, and it's like, okay, well, I'll see you. And then like the next person comes in, you know, especially Black Velvetopia is a level like that.
Yeah,
because the whole team worked on that one.
Yeah, there's like a little piece of every.
Yes,
there's a little heart of all of your team.
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure. Like it's, and we were very, I don't know what the word is, like so warmed by or like touched by the fact that it wasn't like that other people responded to those things, because we worked on that game for so long and so hard that we didn't really know whether anyone was even gonna get those jokes.
Yeah.
It was we were just trying to, like, a lot of the time when working on Psychonauts, we were just trying to make ourselves laugh. So
on things that you've said previously, you've talked about how Double Fine is a really diverse company, and how often, like, in such a positive work environment, how does that affect the overall production of the game?
Okay, so a couple of comments. So yeah, when I started, there were a bunch of women who worked there, so I never questioned that there were gonna, you know, that women are welcome in game development. The only time I ever thought that something was amiss was through my interactions outside of the company. People often assumed that I was working in PR or something like that, which is a little strange. You know, like it was. That was definitely, I mean, that wasn't cool, but like it was something, you know. And I would get strange reactions like, oh, you're a programmer for video games, like, wow, woman. Like, and I would get a lot of that, because the thing is about me is that I probably don't look like a programmer, like, or, you know, like a fan of games a lot of the time, so I think it throws people off. But I actually believe that it's good to have people who look like me in the games industry, because like not all gamers look the same.
Agreed.
And so there's that. So then the other thing about diversity. So it's not just about having a diverse team. It's also having a team that listens to everyone on the team. Yeah. And I remember when we were working on Brutal Legend, it's about heavy metal fantasy, which notoriously women are like not really like you know, part of the team there. But a lot of us were like, well, look, there are going to be all these hot ladies in the game. Can we have hot men? And Tim and Scott were like, you know, Scott Campbell, the lead artist, was like, they both listened to us. And so Scott would send us drawings of like, is this guy hot enough? Like, what do you think of this one? Because we were like, you know, wider shoulders, like, whatever. Like more, like whatever. And it was cool that he, like, you know, we gave him some reference materials to like work from and things like that. Plus, it was really important that there were like cool women, like, or cool female monsters in the game too, which hadn't really been done, like giving a lot more character. Like even if the physique was very feminine looking, there was something else going on. Like it's just, I was a big fan of that, I think, on the game. And we all, you know, a lot of the women, we kind of like, hey, what if this character did this other thing? So it was it's hard for me, like so there's a character called Bladehead. I forget what it was, the official term for it was in the shipping game, but it was on the demonic group. Okay. And I like the design so much. It's like basically these characters who have like blades for heads, and it's a feminine form, and they're like, you know, little S&Ms, and their hands are like they're wearing full latex. They have no faces, nothing. They're completely covered in latex, as were all the other ones, really, all the other characters on that team. But I like the anime. I love the way that they moved so much, and the way that they attacked, that I actually wouldn't attack them in the game. Like, and I like there were these things like that. There were just these small touches where I was just like, wow, I've never seen that before in a game. Like, just the way it was kind of an awkward movement a little bit, and they were slightly bow-legged, and there was just something that was not how the female form is usually portrayed. Yeah, so there was, I think, because there were so many of us, and like so many women contributing to the character design, the animations, you know, whatever it was, I think, and Tim really like listened to us.
I guess like one thing growing up is, you know, oftentimes you kind of heard the horror stories, not just actually about video games, but just women and tech and women and entertainment in general. And when I read a lot of positive things about Double Fine, and I just think that's really cool. And I think it also shows in the final product when you can tell that a lot of thoughts and opinions were put into it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we also had a bunch of, people who are eccentric, who actually draw references from outside of games in particular, because that's the other thing that tends to happen in games, especially if you don't have a diverse team, is that you're drinking from the same well. And that does not bring any new ideas to the table. So like we you know, a lot of us tried to bring influences from literally like everything we loved outside, you know, whether it was games, whether it was film, whatever it was. Like I learned a lot. Like I because programmers weren't segregated from the artists, I learned so much, and like was introduced to so many interesting things like throughout throughout just like my development tenure at Double Fine. I mean, Lee Petty, one of my last games that I worked on was Headlander, and the last game that I shipped. And he would sit us down and watch like 60s and 70s sci-fi films with us to like get us into the mood of like, you know, that world. And there's just some of these films I never would have known about them, and they did like, and it really does inspire you. And like I was doing some UI for the game, and I would like, you know, look at videos of old computers and how they looked and how they rotated, and I tried to bring some of that animation into the UI I was doing, for instance. So anyway, it really like it really helps to draw from as many influences as possible and having as many diverse perspectives on things as possible.
Well, you were talking a lot about gender neutral dialogue earlier, and especially kind of in this generation right now, a lot of when people want to identify themselves, it's no longer kind of like cut and dry anymore.
Sure.
So I wonder if in video gaming in general we're going to see that change of just like different identity. Like identity can mean a lot of things. Right.
Yeah. So like me personally, I can only really like. They tell writers, write what you know. Like I can only the best thing that I can contribute is my own experience of life. So I'm not the best person to comment on that particular thing. I mean, I definitely can try to relate. You know, if someone tells me of their experience, I can try to relate, and I can try like if something really, if I really feel like I understand something, I can try to bring it in to my work for sure. But, you know, if you are somebody who doesn't feel represented in games, the easiest solution is for you to go and make a game, find a team to work on to make a game, like, because that's the best, that's the shortest path to making that better. And that's like, I mean, you can't just be this, and the other thing I guess what I want to say is, you might be the first person making games that are about that, or maybe like, one of the pioneers, but people will see your work and there will be others. You will indirectly be creating games for yourself to play in the future. So
and I think that's really awesome. Things like Steam and all of these different and even mobile gaming, there's just more areas where you can enter.
I mean, it's like, it's not all paradise, and it's not going to be easy, because there are quite a few games out there. The market is really getting quite crowded, but you should still do it. Like, especially if you have a really interesting vision, if you have if you execute well on it, like it will get out there. It will, like, and especially if you try to, I mean, there's also like social media and things like that. It becomes easier to get your game out there. People will notice it. There are definitely avenues. So
definitely. What is your ideal gaming experience? Like, what are some mechanics that you feel really help the player, like that you like to implement because they help the player out, like that type of thing?
So ideal game. So my most favorite game to play is games where there is it's a game where the playtime is short, but you get to it's basically kind of a roguelike, but a narrative roguelike.
Okay.
Where you play it through and then you have a certain kind of experience, and then you play it again and you have a completely different experience.
Oh,
there are very few games like that, but there are some, right? And
it's like kind of like a different perspective in each playthrough.
Yes, exactly. And then there's a lot of perhaps randomness, perhaps like just circumstantial, like it so happens that this permutation of choices has led you to this very unique outcome type of thing. Like really, that's my favorite type of thing. I really, really love that.
Yeah.
And so I wish it was like, the best way to do these kinds of games is through text. And that's great and all, but like I wish that there was more going on. Like I wish it was, for instance, 80 Days is a really good example of this kind of game. It's not, it's not a super short kind of experience. It's like a few hours long, but they did this thing where you actually have a simulation and management aspect to the game as well. Mm-hmm. And it feels like, it's not just a story that's being told through like a change in your path or something like that. Yeah, it is actually feels a lot of these elements kind of work together. Like it's very symbiotic, right? I like strategic challenges rather than twitch challenges. Like I play a lot of board games and things like that, and so like I love the long strategies. I play like a lot of these. Like Civ style games, and things like that. Like I really love that. And I love like for King of Dragon Pass and what is it called? Crusader Kings 2. And things that just involve a lot of complex systems that kind of come together sometimes and other times do not. But like I do like that stuff.
Yeah. What's your favorite sim game actually?
My favorite sim game. I really love Cart Life and I really love Papers, Please. And Papers, Please in particular was something very personal to me because like I'm a refugee from Eastern Europe. I'm from USSR specifically. I grew up in Ukraine, and it really was kind of harrowing. Like being from that, I was on the other side of that. We had to wait for a very long time for permission. My mom wasn't let out of the country and like all these kind of crazy things. And it was really weird and creepy a little bit and awesome to play a game from the perspective of the other side. Yeah. And to kind of understand the power dynamic a little bit better.
What you were talking about earlier, that reminds me of Nier Automata, because since I just finished that, except it's like 60 hours and it's not 3 hours. But so the way that game works is there's 5 different endings that you get, but in each playthrough, which is about like 6 to 8 hours, you're playing with a different perspective and you're playing with a different character each time. And then on top of that, there's optional side quests that can help with the narrative and help explain more things, but you don't have to play them if you don't want to. So every player's experience would be very different.
Yeah. I actually really love the idea that every player's experience would be really different, and it's not just because they've chosen one path or another, but there's a roll of the die in the game where like this one thing is going to be just that way for your specific playthrough. I put that stuff into Broken Age where every time you play there's a different solution to like one of the wiring puzzle, for instance, and that is just yours. It is in your save game, like that's as soon really as cool. You encounter that, because there's something kind of magical about that. Like I think that I agree. One thing that attracted me, and I know you do, your background is also in computer science, so like you one thing I really love about programming specifically is it feels like we're like the magicians.
Yeah, but everyone's code is different. Like everyone has a different way from getting from point A to point B.
Sure. Yeah. But it feels like you can really truly summon, like, you know, the idea that there is something very unique to this specific player's game.
Yes.
There's something really magical about it. It's like there really is. It's this one special, the way we've arranged the bits, like this like combination of things is special just for your game.
Yeah.
I think it's really cool.
Like everything is like a snowflake.
Yeah. Seriously.
So you've had a lot of talks about dialogue, and my question is, are there other topics that you are interested in kind of addressing in the future about? Definitely.
I mean, I've given a few talks about simulation games and expressive simulation in particular. And like, just as a quick summary, what I mean by simulation games is games that, you know, things like everything from SimCity to like, you know, even just The Sims, like things like Cart Life and Papers, Please, and like those games. They all kind of like pick something in the world that they want to model, you know, like maybe an economy, like something like that, where it's an exploration of this particular system, right? And what those games end up doing is expressing something using that. Now, the reason is whenever you're choosing what to model in the game, you're making an authorial decision there. Like, I think this is important to model, but not this. You know, it's sort of like drawing a map. You're not going to draw every single blade of grass or something like that. You're going to draw like where the streets are. Like you're going to, depending, maybe if you're doing a grass map, you know, maybe you would, but you choose like what you think is important to present on the map, right?
Yes.
And it's a very similar thing with games as well. Like what you choose to represent in a game is important. And a lot of people, I think maybe, or rather, you should not forget that as a developer that you are making that choice every time you put something in your game, like how the degree to which you stylize it and things like that. I have given a talk about this kind of thing, but it's like a topic that is not going to make sense in summary. So there is a talk.
To end this podcast, what are you playing right now? You kind of talked
Shadow of the Colossus.
Yes.
Yeah. That was I was actually on a Twitch stream the other day for the slow jam where we played. It's the opposite of speedrun. We really take our time and enjoy the game and do weird, you know, little things in it, like jump on the hawk and just see how far we can actually hold on to it. Yeah.
I haven't gone that far in the game yet.
Yeah, there's like these little secrets throughout. If you like, there's not a lot of reason to explore the environment because you are just trying to find the next Colossus. But if you take the time, there is actually like these weird little secret spots with, you know, special stuff like that.
And this is all from the original game too?
Yes. Okay. Yeah. So Shadow of the Colossus.
Nice.
The remaster.
Yeah, I'm also playing that too.
Yeah.
Are you doing the photo mode?
We did that a few times. I mean, is
it necessary? I actually turned it off. I don't even have the photo mode on at all.
I don't know. I mean, I think the original game also kind of had these funny things, like there's a mirror mode, like you can play the whole game. I mean, it's just it's silliness. But I mean, I don't know. I really love that game, and so I'd probably play the mirror mode. There's also like this secret garden you can climb to.
There's a secret garden?
Yeah.
Is it on a Colossus?
No, it is on the temple that you're in. Like there's
really?
a side. Yeah.
My gosh.
I think that's where it is. But here's the thing: you have to beat the game like twice before
I see.
Yeah, before your meter is charged enough so that you can survive hanging on to it.
I didn't even realize there were all of these things.
To be honest, I hadn't either. Like I only found out about it after I like did some research on the internet back in the day. And But now, I mean, I'm not even sure the secret garden thing was in the original game, but we definitely saw the wall and tried to climb it.
Oh, that's really cool. So, really random, but when I defeated the first boss, so that was when you're trying, for people who haven't played it, that's basically your tutorial on how. And yesterday I played it for the first time, and I defeated the first boss. It was really difficult getting the climbing and controls at first.
To be honest with you, the first Colossus is the hardest.
Oh, okay.
I think it gets way easier later. I mean, like basically once you get a grasp on the controls were a little bit tricky to get used to initially. But then I would say you're not going to have as much trouble again.
Yeah.
There's one other boss that is a bit of a pain in the ass, but at least looks incredible. So yeah. I remember when I started, I was like, oh my god, this is way harder than I remember this being. And
there's this glowing red on his bottom leg, and I thought I was supposed to attack that at first, but then I realized you attack that to knock him down first.
Yes.
And then I started climbing it, and kind of the back is a little furry, so I just kind of started attacking it, but I was like, am I doing this right? Like I don't know what's going on. And then I fell and then got stomped on, and then at my second playthrough I climbed a little bit farther and I realized, oh, the guy's target is on its head. Yeah.
If you equip the sword, pro tip, equip the sword when you get on the monster, because then automatically the points the points of hurt will glow.
Oh,
the weak points. Yeah, actually, what's weird for me is like I had a really hard time killing those things because like it just felt wrong to do it or something. I don't know.
Favorite hangout spot, and also favorite restaurant.
Okay, there at B-Star, which is located on Clement between 2nd and 3rd Avenue. They have this thing called Tuna Don, and I'm like addicted to it. It is just like, I don't know, it's a weird concoction of like it's tuna, it's raw tuna.
And then the donburi, right?
Well, sort of, but they do it in this interesting way. It's the most amazing thing. I don't know. I mean, I'm probably way overselling it, but I don't know. There's something about it that is just like, I love that stuff. I also love sushi a lot. So I go to like some sushi place around town.
Nice. Have you been to the conveyor belt one yet? I forgot what it's called.
Oh, the sushi boat place? Or wait, is there a specific one you mean?
So there's like I forgot the name, but there's a conveyor belt sushi place. And it's kind of like a game with the party that you come with.
Really?
So it's like, say you came with a party of 3. So it's like sort of you're all competing each other who can eat the most plates.
Really?
And whoever gets the most plates, you actually get a small stuffed animal. I forgot the name though.
Oh, well, I'm gonna have to look that up. That sounds really fun.
Yeah.
I get like there's one. So I used to live in that neighborhood that I just named on Clement Street. So there's another one that has a karaoke room that is free if you spend a certain amount of money. Yes. Yeah. The control scheme for choosing songs is not the best, but it's free. So
for sure. Final question, just what's a quote you live by?
I don't know. I'm just going to throw out live and let live because, like, we are living in a very stressful time and, like, let's just not judge each other too much because we're not the enemy.
Got it.
I don't know. I say that as someone who understands just how serious the situation is. So
there you have it, folks. Yeah. Thank you, Anna, for coming to the podcast.
Thank you for having me, Elise.
This has been the 40th episode of Downtime Podcast. We'll talk to you all next week.
Bye.